Okay, episode 17. We are taking a listener's, hopefully, maybe a listener, maybe not a listener, a question from a listener.
Athlete.
An athlete that we are going to address and just kind of bring into an open discussion and talk about a little bit. So Brandon's going to read the question from Circle. If you're a Mayhem performance coaching client and you're not on Circle,
Let's go.
you will be released from the program.
We already got berated by Foster earlier today about not getting athletes on Circle.
I was hoping you would go there.
So yeah, please log in. If you don't know how to log in, contact your coach. You're probably my athlete as well, so contact me. If you don't know how to sign into Apollo, also contact me because neither do I.
Jake Foster. Jake Foster, Mayhem Nation.
We'll go to Jake together. Yeah. I'll get fired, and then you'll actually get on Circle and Apollo.
If we fire Dom, I'll get fired right after firing Dom.
The best intro ever. I don't know how to top that with this question. All right, so yeah, we posted the podcast last week in Circle, and we had a couple.
Only because Jessica said.
Yeah, Jessica said post it in there. So thank you, Jessica, for doing that. The question is, could you turn this quote into a podcast episode? The quote is, CrossFit's addictive pull goes beyond the workouts. It's the endorphin highs, structured progress, and powerful sense of identity and belonging that keep people coming back. The emotional roller coaster of falling in and out of love with CrossFit, the struggles of injury and burnout, and why walking away can feel like losing a part of yourself. Strong.
All right, Dom, go.
Yeah. I know a few athletes that could probably write a book on this, to be honest. A couple come to mind. Man, that is a great question. What was the first part of the question? Let's do part by part, because there's 3 parts in that question.
So CrossFit's addictive pull goes beyond the workouts. It's the endorphin highs, structured progress, and powerful sense of identity and belonging that keep people coming back.
That's good. Yeah, the endorphin highs are real. I mean, I would even think for myself, I can think in my own journey where like I actually stopped doing CrossFit probably for about a 6 or 8 month period, just because of some stuff going on in my life, and I just did not want to work out at all. But I tried to do other forms of exercise, and I literally couldn't because of that, like endorphin rush, to the point of where like I was like, I got to do CrossFit because it's just fun, and if I have to go do another chest day, I'm gonna kill myself. So
I've always said, my first thought when I hear that, I think I briefly scanned that when Jessica posted it, but I haven't thought about it at all. So this is the first time I'm thinking about it. But I've talked about this in the past, and it gets kind of philosophical. But I've said it a few different times. It's like the beauty of CrossFit is its novelty, and I think just like every good thing in life, not trying to sound like a Buddhist where it's always like the middle way, but it's like sometimes the novelty is also like one of its greatest weaknesses. And what I mean by that is that like people become addicted to that novelty. And then they're unable, like you're saying, Dom, to do anything else that requires monotony. And I think that there's a place for monotony. You think about any good endeavor, any good thing in life requires you to embrace monotony. Marriage, relationships, right? I would even say your walk with the Lord. Like the process of sanctification requires embracing monotony in your prayer life, in your Bible reading. So I think it's potentially... It's like that overemphasis on it's always got to be sexy. It's always got to be new. That's what draws people in, which is awesome. It keeps fresh and exciting and fun, but it can be overdone. And then you think you need fresh, exciting, and fun in other areas of your life. And it's like no good thing in life is always fresh, exciting, and fun.
Yeah. To that point, I think when I read this quote, and Dom, you said this, but like I've been there too. The way that I think about it is like CrossFit has now become the master of my life. And that's a really dangerous place to be. And everyone that's listening to this has been there where, especially if you're like in it, you're excited about training, you're going to bed at night and you're thinking about tomorrow's workout. You're thinking about how you're going to pace, this 15-minute AMRAP that Dom just gave me in my training, or the snatch that I have to hit at 92% the next day. And then when you wake up, you're thinking about everything around your day is centered on that workout, your performance, the expectations of that performance. And while some of that is good if you want to be a high-level performer, if you don't have other things that you're protecting, other priorities, a better master in your life, which for me is Jesus Christ, then it becomes something that is all-consuming. And no matter where the performance goes, no matter how well things go or how poorly they go, you end up in that same spot with this giant void in your heart. And so to me, I think like that's where I would turn the conversation of like having this discussion about like, what is your why when you're doing CrossFit, and how do you protect yourself from it becoming a master of your life?
Well, I thought we were going part by part, man.
Sorry.
Summarize the whole quote. No, that's good. Yeah.
No, I mean, I see that in athletes I coach. I've seen that in myself, where it's like the endorphin thing that she was specifically talking about too. I think it goes both ways, of like high highs and really low lows, when it's like, oh, I just finished a 6-week cycle. I have a testing week next week. There's a 1 rep max snatch in it. If I don't hit more than I hit 6 weeks ago, then my day is ruined. Not let alone my day, my week, my life. All the people around me are going to get the brunt of me not hitting a PR snatch after a 6-week progression. I've been there. I've seen so many athletes be there. And I mean, I know for myself, it literally took me being converted for that to change.
Yes.
If I wasn't converted, it would not have changed. And it affected a lot of my own life. And again, I've worked with a bunch of athletes that kind of came to the same realization, is like, okay, out of hitting a max PR snatch, like, what do I have that brings me joy? That is a crazy place to be in. But like, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Like being at a place where like, okay, only hitting a PR snatch actually brings me joy. That is wild to say, but like, I can understand that.
We've all been there, and I understand and empathize with that. And I probably can still get there even in CrossFit. And I'm not doing it like on a high level, but it's like, I still want to do well in this workout. I still want to beat people. And that's a good hunger to have.
Yeah.
But again, when it's controlling every aspect of your life, that becomes this really dangerous game that we're playing, where every emotional state hinges on how my CrossFit workout went that day, or what PR did I hit or didn't hit. You know, Campbell, who's done a lot of media stuff for Mayhem Performance, he posted this during the Open that was like, it still sticks with me, so powerful the way that he built it out. He just had like he's a camera guy, like great with media. So he had like a camera sitting there on a track, and he was like, I just finished, I think it was the first workout, 25.1. And man, I was like so proud of my performance until I opened up the leaderboard and saw where I was. He's like, then all of a sudden I got really upset with where I was, where my name was on the leaderboard. And it's that whole concept of like, he was proud of his effort and his execution, but then he tied all of that joy into this expectation to be higher up on the leaderboard. I think that's what happens with a lot of CrossFitters, is like, they only care about that performance metric instead of thinking about the process that they're in of like bettering themselves and continuing to try to pursue excellence in all that they do.
It's a tricky line to toe, right? Between being a competitor and being like, because actually I talked to Connor and Campbell made that video, and I talked to them after. It was a good conversation, because it's like, one part of competition, inherent in competition, is comparison.
Yeah.
You have to compare when you compete. It's part of it. And it's like, and then I think we always use a lot of cliches, like, it's just not about, putting all your joy or finding your entire identity within that comparison, but like, practically, what does that actually mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, if somebody, like, I think we all like kind of nod our head and like get that, but how do you actually practically find the balance between going, I always think about Rich, right? Like, I mean, the guy, live, eat, breathe, sleep, this stuff. Like, I mean, he was all in, but he'd be the person to ask, right? Like, at his level, but how do you toe that line between, I'm all in, I'm going to pursue it with everything I got, but I'm not going to root my identity in it? What does that practically look like? Because you got to compare yourself on the leaderboard.
Yeah.
And it's okay if it frustrates you. It should, as an athlete, right? Like, you should get frustrated when you don't win. We want to win.
No,
but again, what does that line
look like?
So
here's the way I look at it. And the first step is, frustration's okay only, like, and I tell all my athletes this, only if you're learning from it. Failure is never an option in anything in life, like in your marriage, in your relationship with your kids, in your walk with Christ, in your job, as long as you're learning from those things, right? Because like, even if you make a mistake, even if you don't hit the PR, even if you struggle in your marriage, if you're learning from that process, let's say I missed the snatch, the good athlete is reviewing the video and saying, where did I make the mistake to continue to get better the next time so I can hit this? The bad athlete, and this is where most people are when they get consumed with the sport, they get frustrated, they pout the rest of the day, they go home, and then they're bitter toward their loved ones because they didn't hit that snatch. So the conversation I have with those athletes is like, look, every failure becomes an opportunity to learn if you're willing to open yourself up to that learning process. And I think the other thing, going back to it, is like you have to have other things that are bigger than yourselves.
Yeah.
It can't just be about that PR. It has to be like, it becomes much easier when you get married or you have kids, because now you have these other things that matter more in your life. I know it's hard, because I was here, Dom, probably the same boat, like pre-marriage, and you're kind of just focused on yourself. CrossFit can become all-consuming really easily, because that's the only thing that you're thinking about.
Yeah.
So rooting yourselves, like I have to still take care of my wife. I have to take care of my kids, and my relationship with God is what's sustaining me in all of these other aspects of my life. So having other places to root your values, the what you believe in, matters. And if you don't have that, it's really hard to do sport.
And that's the practical gauge too, right? Is it taking away time, literally time, from life's greatest priorities? Am I sacrificing devotional time for training, right? Like, or am I sacrificing time for my wife, my kids, so on and so forth? I mean, I don't want to put words in Rich's mouth, but I think that was one of the primary motivators for him retiring or stepping back, even from individual competition, was kids, right? And family. Like, I think he felt like, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Gunkler, you can tell me too, that he felt like it was taking away time from his family.
Sure.
So
I think anybody that's as competitive as he is too, it's like, okay, if I can't train this much, like winning isn't my priority anymore.
Yeah.
Like as an individual. So maybe I'll shift to team because I still want to win. I still want to compete. I still want to do these things, but it gives me enough time to spend with my family and still do those things. Right. Mm-hmm. Which is like, you always say this, it's like the difference between like priorities and expectations.
Yeah.
Like they have to align.
Goals and priorities.
Goals and priorities. So it's like, I think that's huge. Like if they don't align, one of them has to change.
Yeah, you live in dissonance. Yeah. I talked to an athlete yesterday, and he hit me up and he's like, man, like my business is growing, coaching is growing. He's got a girlfriend, he's got a serious relationship. He's like, I'm trying to spend more time there and invest more time into the relationship with my girlfriend. So I'm going to cut my training down. I'm going to do less 2-a-days. And deal with me. It's like, man, I know he didn't expect to have this conversation, but it's like, it has to be had. I told him, it's like, man, that's great. Actually, all the reasons you're giving me, I think are fantastic. Like, and I completely support you in that, but we have to change your goal. And he's like, what? Like, I'm like, no, we have to change your goal. Like, we actually did the math. It was something like, hey, you training 2 less 2-a-days a week means you're actually training now over the course of a year. It was something like 550 hours less than the guys that are doing those sessions. Right. So you cannot tell me that you expect to compete with those guys and that's going to be your expectation walking into the next year of competition while training 550 less hours than they are, because that's going to rob you of your joy. And it's like, you're going to live out of alignment here. So either you need to go back and change your priorities. You need to cut back on work. You need to cut back on time with your girlfriend, or you need to go change your goal. But you can't have your cake and eat it too. Yeah. So it was a great conversation. He was like, man, I didn't even think about doing that. It's like, I just don't want to get fired in 6 months. I'm just kidding. when you get upset because you're training significantly less and you can't hang anymore. So,
right. Can I jump in there?
Yeah.
I think of a way that you can, each athlete can measure or evaluate whether or not their perspective in the sport is healthy or not, is when, because like you said, you can get frustrated. Frustration's okay in all aspects of life, right? But where does that frustration lead you? Focused on the past, stuck in the past, or does it lead you to the future? Growth mindset, right? Yeah. And focused on, okay, next time, what am I going to do differently, right? So look at the fruit of that frustration. Where does it lead you towards? And then you know whether or not CrossFit's out of place in your life, right? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think, so I've told this story, maybe even on the podcast before, I don't know. I've told the story so many times, but like the two examples I love are Tiger Woods and Tom Brady, both like the best in their sport. But talking about the growth mindset, they cared about it more, and they probably had a disordered lifestyle because they were so focused on it. But a good example of how to learn from it, even if you are a little disordered, Tiger talks about the story where he's at the Masters and he's on the backstretch, the final 9 holes. He's got like a 2-stroke lead, and he hits a driver deep into the woods. And for some people, they just melt down in that situation. Like, that's an easy double bogey. Now I'm going to be tied for the lead. Someone may beat me. But instead, he talks about how his practice is always one shot at a time. The only thing that matters is the next shot. And so instead of getting frustrated by it, he went into the woods, and all he's thinking about is, how can I get this ball back into the fairway? The only thing he thought about. And then obviously he went on to win. Of course, he's the best of all time, but everyone gets the point. Whereas most of us, I missed that PR snatch. I didn't qualify for the games because I missed something in a competition. I did poorly in this Wadapalooza qualifier or whatever, and then everything else just sucks after that, as opposed to learning from it. And then the same thing with Tom Brady. He talks about this in one of his first Super Bowls where he threw an interception that was like a really bad throw. And instead of getting frustrated, and he talks about, like, I was really angry, and I actually threw the iPad down on the sideline, but then he's like, wait, I have to learn from this. So he takes the iPad, reviews the play, and then the next drive or 2 drives later, whatever, he throws a touchdown in the same play call because he learned from it. So the same way when we're thinking about our CrossFit journey, when you do run into failure or you do get consumed by it, you got to take that step back and say, okay, how can I either readjust my goals, reorient my goals, or at least learn from these mistakes that I'm making now? Otherwise, like, it does become miserable. Like, yes, I want to be a winner, but the only way to become a winner is to learn from those failures. Like, it wasn't easy for Rich. It wasn't easy for Fraser. It's not easy for any of these champions. You just don't see it. You don't see it on Instagram. So you think, oh, he's always hitting that PR. It's like, no, there were plenty of days where maybe a knee was sore, or shoulder was hurt, or a workout didn't go the way that they wanted to, but they bounced back from it because they were learning from each piece, each mistake.
Yeah, Rory McIlroy was just talking about that at the Masters this past weekend. Like, I forget what ball he
hit a ball in the water on 13 and cost his lead. Yeah,
and he told himself, though. So you would probably know the player. I forget the player's name he was alluding to, but he was like, he said that he thought back at that moment to another player recently that had made a similar mistake or had fallen real far behind, and maybe it was the U.S. Open or something, I don't really know, and came back and won. And he's like, that's what I fixed my mind on. So good. Yeah, which same thing, coming back, growth mindset. That was our first lesson at school with my 8th graders every year. We would talk about growth versus fixed mindset, and I would hammer that home with them. I think what I was talking about with like the goals and priorities, being in alignment, is I do think that there are a lot of people in competitive CrossFit, or they want to improve in the sport, that really do need to sit down and actually look at, are you setting yourself up for frustration? Like, the root of all anger is unmet expectations, but are you setting up expectations for yourself that you can't achieve because you're not committing enough time to it? And I think a lot of those people think then we would advocate, or coaches would advocate, to change their priorities, commit more time, when sometimes it's like, no, just need to change your goal, right? Like, and maybe you just need to make it a hobby, and there's no shame in that too, you know?
Well, here's another perspective, and I've found this to be true, especially with a lot of older athletes, is if they just shift their expectations a little bit and say, I'm okay with spending a little less time in the gym to make sure I'm prioritizing the things that are most precious to me. I always say protect what's precious, which is, you know, family, your relationship, God, whatever it may be for that athlete, that they actually succeed in the gym.
Yeah.
Because now there's no stress or pressure in the gym.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now they're hitting PRs, they're crushing all their conditioning work because they don't have all those external stressors that they were putting on themselves.
That's what I was going to say. I think that like 30 plus, you get married, you have kids, you have a career. I think that starts to matter a whole lot more.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. If you can lower your cup, so to speak, you know, you can get those people probably are like, they're literally pushing themselves harder in training. They can actually go there now, right?
Yep.
Because they're, we call allostatic load. Their total load of stress and their cup of stress is lower. That's a great point.
And they could probably actually recover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, anecdotally, like, just a story for me is like this last training block. So I'm running the next marathon on Saturday, and I've gotten chewed up and spit out. And I look at the last 2 marathons, and I'm like, I did the same training volume, the same. I'm eating the same, which is plenty. Like, I'm eating maintenance calories. Actually kind of sucks. I haven't lost any weight. You'd think I would lose some weight running a marathon. Training for a marathon hasn't happened. Sleeping the same quantity. And I'm like locked in on this stuff, right? Like, but I was super beat up, overtrained, showing all the symptoms of overtraining leading into this marathon, like not sleeping well. I mean, you can go into all the laundry list of things, getting beat up, nagging injuries, so on and so forth. All my runs felt terrible. And you're looking at it, you're like, what changed? I just worked more. Like, that was it. Like, just had more hours I was spending in work. My cup was more full. I couldn't go as hard. I actually think I was fitter 6 months ago than I am now, which doesn't make sense because I've trained the same, I've ate the same, I've slept the same, but just workload went up. So kind of to your point.
Yeah. I'll read the last part of this and we can kind of wrap up. The emotional roller coaster of falling in and out of love with CrossFit, the struggles of injury and burnout, and why walking away can feel like losing a part of yourself. Thoughts?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the classic case of wrapping what we've been talking about, just wrapping your identity in it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not for everybody, but I think on the highest competitive level, we need to have a more, like, what's the right word for it? we need to have a better realization of like your career will end. Like it doesn't have to last forever. You can also even put a timeline on it if you want to. For some reason in like CrossFit, I feel like people feel like they have to like compete forever, and then like when it is over, they will have nothing. But I've had a few athletes walk away from the sport and they're like 10 times happier now that they're not CrossFitting for a million different reasons, which we don't have enough time to go into. But like they're okay with not competing at all. And both of those athletes that I can think of, one still does CrossFit for like just general fitness, and the other one is actually currently coaching CrossFit at an affiliate, but is not going to work as a coach or like a competitive coach or compete anymore, and has even done some local competitions like for fun.
Yeah.
And both of those athletes like can still do CrossFit now. It took them a little while to get back into it. They had to like completely separate. But they're able to do it now, and it's a part of their life, not their actual life, which goes back to like having a why. But I think when it was like their complete identity, they almost like needed to cut it off in order to go back to it, if that makes sense. Like they literally had to like cut the umbilical cord and be like, I need zero CrossFit in my life until I can slowly work myself back to a place where like it's just something I do, not necessarily who I am. And I think like I look at both of their lives and how they did it, like specifically what you said, like walking away, like that probably will come for everybody in some point in terms of like competitiveness.
Yeah.
Maybe not for like life, but I think about that sometimes. Like at some point, people might just want to do class like once a day, and that's it. And like that's actually what it originally was designed for.
Yeah.
It wasn't even meant to be a sport. So
yeah, one of the best devotions I can ever remember was my senior year of football at Taylor better than Wheaton. And it was before the last game, and the pastor came in with some guy from Texas, and he was speaking to the seniors specifically and just talking about, it was such a simple sermon and message, but talking to us about how, you know, we should be viewing football as just a stepping stone, right? Like, and that, you know, he lived in Texas. So he's like, guys, like I've seen like football ruin men's life. Like they stop playing in high school or in college and they can never let it go. They're in fantasy leagues. They're spending tons of money on it. They're gambling. They're watching football Monday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night. All the while, their kids are in the corner playing on their own, and their wives are being neglected, and they can't let it go. And like he was just challenging us. It was really simple. He's just like, don't be those men. Like this is just a step. And so it just reminded me of that conversation.
something that I feel is like unaddressed a little bit too, which is different from football and other things, is our sport. Especially I've seen this for like competitive females, also brings along with it like probably like a little bit like bodybuilding, is there's an image aspect.
Yeah.
And people fear walking away from competitive CrossFit because their image will change.
Yes.
When you are not training as much as you do for competitive sport, your body will probably change. You'll have a little less muscle. You probably won't be as lean. You might eat more like brownies or something. Like I know when I stopped CrossFit, like I know when I stopped CrossFit, I was like, oh my God, I can eat a brownie for breakfast.
Actually, I'm gonna like add a layer and to go what you're saying though too. Then like where the stepping stone analogy, I think I was ironically just talking to Sean about this yesterday. Where I think one of the biggest faults I made as a coach, I don't know how to say it right. I don't want to say discourage; it's too strong of a word. But sometimes like almost encourage people to hang up the cleats. Come on, move on, right? Like you got. And sometimes I almost regret a little bit of that, because I think one of the beauties of CrossFit is, and it's hard for that former athlete, like you said, sometimes people just need to cut it so they can almost come back to it and have a healthy relationship with it. But one of the beauties of our sport is that it's like running. It can be a hobby. It's actually, it's the trap, the danger of it, and the beauty of it is that you can just go throw down in local competitions and have fun with it and go, you know, I'm going to train 5 days a week for 60 minutes and maximize my time, like we were talking about, I think in the last podcast, and then just go play and make it a hobby. Yeah. I think that's maybe for people who love the sport, that's the ideal. It's like finding how to have that happy medium, and how you do that's a whole other. Have people hold you accountable. I think, you know, athletes who tell us as coaches, that's one of our responsibilities. Like, here are my priorities in life, and I think if you have a good coach and a good relationship with a coach, that coach can come in and go, you're living out of alignment, you know? So
Well, I would wrap it up just with this. I think for every athlete, regardless of what your aspirations or goals are, it's worthwhile to sit down and identify what your why really is. Like, what's your purpose in life? And then start to structure your training around that. Training should, in my view, enrich all those other aspects of your life. And being dedicated and working really hard and still getting frustrated with CrossFit can be one of those things. That's a good thing. Like, God has given us these bodies to be able to glorify him. And in one way, like winning the CrossFit Games can be that. Making a semifinals can be that. Winning a local competition can be that. But you don't want it to be out of line, right? So reorder those priorities based on kind of what your values are. And I think that's important.
Yeah. I think the last thing I'll add is I think if you really want to succeed in whatever level of competitive CrossFit you're doing, you got to not do it for any recognition. And I think I can feel by experience that I've gone through that both as an athlete and as a coach. And once I could get past a need for recognition in either of those places, both started to be really fun, and both are really now easy to walk away from if I wanted to. And until I wasn't doing it for the recognition of other people is when I also actually got good at it, both of them. Now, I was never going to be a games athlete because I'm just not genetically gifted enough. And I also had other priorities. Like, I actually loved coaching in an affiliate at the time, and I wasn't going to sacrifice that to make the games. And I wasn't going to sacrifice my relationship with my girlfriend and that to make the games. So I was just trying to make a regional. But besides the point of that, I think an analogy I'd like to use, and I'm stealing this from a pastor that I've heard, but he tells a story about a rose in a garden. And God plants this rose in the garden. And in the middle of this garden, the garden is placed in a forest. And it's in such a remote forest that does have people walk through it, but the specific place where God planted the rose, nobody ever walks. So no one will ever see that rose. And then the question is asked, well, why the heck would God plant that rose if no one is ever going to see it? And the pastor said that God's response is, well, I see the rose every single day. And that should be enough recognition. I think when I heard that, once I got there, I was like, oh, well, I don't really need anything, actually, because God sees me every day.
That's it. That's a great way to end it.